Would you consider a medium-sized Portuguese city a good fit for you? Maybe you need to learn a bit more about it before you take the plunge. I'm Kalie with Expats Everywhere, and we're going to show you a medium-sized Caldas da Rainha and let you decide.
And I'm Josh with Expats Everywhere. Did you know that the world's oldest thermal hospital was built in Portugal? To be more specific, it was founded here in the city of Caldas da Rainha. Let's unpack the city so you can understand some history, the cost of living, things to do, and more.
Now, most people have never heard of this small Portuguese city, but it boasts of a particularly interesting accomplishment of having the world's first thermal hospital, like Josh said. And the story of how it came about is just as interesting. So Josh, why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. So the legend has it that in the late 15th century, the Queen of Portugal at that time, Rainha Dona Leonor, was passing through the area and saw some people bathing in hot, swampy water. Well, naturally, she asked them why they were doing it, and the people responded saying the water could heal diseases.
Right then, apparently, the queen tried it for herself and was healed of a disease she had. She later decided to build bathing facilities there.
Those were called Hospital Termal de Nossa Senhora do Popolo, and thus established the world's first thermal hospital. Another interesting fact about this city is that its identity is deeply connected with the opening of the hospital. In fact, Caldas da Rainha literally means the Queen's thermal springs.
Today, the hospital remains open for tourists to just go in and look, but it's still functioning. So if you live here, you can bathe in the waters and experience the healing properties for yourself.
And right next to the hospital, you'll find what is in fact a Portuguese national monument, the Igreja de Nossa Senhora do Popolo, or the Church of Our Lady of the Populace.
Also in this area is Dom Carlos I Park. It's great for a shaded stroll, grabbing a coffee, listening to a busker, or maybe enjoying the donut-shaped lake where you can rent a rowboat.
If you're still in the city center, you'll also find Praça da República, better known by the locals as Praça da Fruta, or Fruit Square. It's home to one of the only daily outdoor farmers markets in all of Portugal, which is pretty cool. The square is lined with buildings that have shops, banks, and plenty of cafes on the ground floor, making it a great spot to grab a coffee and soak in the local vibe.
Another notable plaza in the city is Praça 25 de Abril.
This church behind me is located in the main plaza and was built in the 20th century.
Okay, so you have a couple important plazas, with Praça da Fruta being at the heart of daily life here, but Caldas da Rainha has more to offer and more going on beyond the town square. So how big is the city really? Let's talk about the population, what surrounds it, and how close it is to major cities like Lisbon and Porto.
The population of the Caldas da Rainha municipality is around 50,000 people, but the city itself has closer to 30,000 people.
Some smaller cities that you might be familiar with that surround Caldas da Rainha are Foz do Areio, which sits near the coast of Portugal, and Óbidos, which is known for its castle and medieval festival.
But if you're not so familiar with those cities, another good reference point is how far it is from Lisbon, the capital, or Porto, the second biggest city in Portugal. It takes a little over an hour to drive south to Lisbon and over 2 hours to drive north to Porto. Lisbon is also where you'll find the closest airport.
If driving is not really an option for you, you can always take public transportation such as the train or bus. Caldas da Rainha sits on the Linha do Oeste, or the Western Line, which runs north from Sintra up toward Leiria and Figueira da Foz. You can catch both regional and interregional trains to get there.
Taking the train from Lisbon isn't the fastest option. It's a bit slower and often involves changing trains once or twice. There is a direct train available though, and the ride from Sete Rios usually takes around 2 to 2.5 hours, and then buses are also an option.
Knowing how to get to Caldas da Rainha by train is a great start, but we can't really understand what it's like to live here without looking at the cost of living. Transportation is just one piece of the puzzle. What about rent, utilities, and groceries? These are all things that are going to shape daily life, so let's take a look and see what costs are actually like.
For a medium-sized city, let's take a look at what real estate's actually like and how much it costs.
If you're planning to rent a one-bedroom apartment in the city center, expect prices to start around 1,000 euros or maybe a bit more. Outside the city center, you'll usually find cheaper options, often under 1,000 a month.
The utility costs in Portugal are very well priced no matter where you live, and Caldas da Rainha is no exception. Basic utilities such as electricity, heating, cooling, water, and garbage, for example, for an 85 square meter apartment will cost around 100 euros.
Now earlier we mentioned the Praça da Fruta, or Fruit Square, that has the outdoor farmers market, which is a great place to buy fruits and vegetables. But Caldas da Rainha also has a good amount of supermarkets where you can do your weekly grocery shopping as well.
A loaf of bread will cost around €1.30, a dozen of eggs around €2.50, a kilo of apples will be around €1.70, and a liter of milk for around €1. Grocery prices are one thing, but to really understand the cost of living, we also need to look at what cost of eating out is like. So let's talk about restaurant prices.
A meal at an inexpensive restaurant should cost around 15 euros, and a 3-course meal for 2 people at a mid-range restaurant will be around 45 euros. So I would say it's fairly average pricing for Portugal.
Yeah, the restaurants don't have a lot to offer here in terms of like culinary diversity. Most of the restaurants will have some sort of Mediterranean or Portuguese style dishes. Typical Portuguese meals often include hearty soups like caldo verde or potato and kale soup, followed by grilled or roasted meats or fish, often served with rice, salad, or boiled potatoes, or all three. And seafood dishes such as bacalhau com natas are very common.
Food tells you a little bit about a place, like the culture, the pace of life, and even the priorities of the people who live there. But we can't fully understand what it's like to live in Caldas da Rainha without knowing who lives here.
Okay, so let's talk about the people that make up the city, from local families and students to a growing community of expats and retirees. This will give you a clearer picture of the lifestyle and whether it might be a good fit for you.
While it's not super touristy here, there seems to be a good amount of expats and the number keeps growing. It should be pretty easy to find other expats here because there are some groups on Facebook that are specific for expats. There are a couple universities here too, so seeing students is not uncommon.
One thing to mention is that Caldas da Rainha is actually well known for being a more artistic city. It is the cradle of one of the most characteristic ceramic styles in Portugal. So you'll not find a lack of art or ceramic museums, workshops, studios, events, and more here. The most well-known one is the Bordalo Pinheiro factory.
All of this to say that joining a workshop or a studio could be a great way to not only get involved in the culture, but also to find other like-minded expats and locals.
It also seems to be a pretty good place for young families and retirees to come and live. It's close enough to neighboring cities that you can make daily trips, but still not get the influx of tourists. The lack of tourists here also means that you can still have that authentic Portuguese feel.
The city is filled with pedestrian-only streets that have cafes, shops, and lots of little things to do.
So now you know who lives here, a mix of locals, young families, retirees, and an increasing number of expats. It's a city that feels lived in but not overcrowded, just the right balance. So the next big question is, how safe is it?
Yeah, and whether you're visiting or thinking about staying long-term, safety is generally a non-negotiable factor. So let's take a closer look at how Caldas da Rainha stacks up when it comes to peace of mind both day and night.
Just like any other place, crime rates have been slowly increasing over the past 5 years, but the crime rates are still very low here. Walking alone in the daytime is totally safe, but you should be extra cautious if you decide to walk alone at night, which is to be expected.
And of course, every city has those areas or neighborhoods that seem a little bit more sketchy. So just be aware that those also exist in Caldas da Rainha too. But overall, Caldas is a very safe place.
So we've covered safety, and the good news is Caldas da Rainha is one of those places where you can generally relax. Now this leads us to the next question that you should answer before you move here. What's the weather like?
After all, no matter how charming a city is, if the climate doesn't suit you, it's hard to feel at home. Let's talk about the kind of weather you can expect year-round in Caldas da Rainha and how it shapes daily life.
All right, so here, summers are usually warm, sunny, and pretty dry, perfect for hitting the beach or exploring the town. Winters, on the other hand, get cooler and wetter with some windy days and a mix of clouds and sun. Throughout the year, temperatures usually range from mid-40s to the high 70s Fahrenheit, and it's pretty rare for it to dip below 40 or go above 90.
While the rainy period can last up to 8 or 9 months, within that period, you still won't get a whole lot of rain. The month with the most rain in Caldas da Rainha is November, with an average rainfall of 3.2 inches.
So the weather is pretty mild, no extreme heat, no brutal cold, which makes it easy to enjoy the outdoors year-round. But if you're planning to stay for a while, one of the most important things to know is what kind of health care you'll have access to.
All right, let's break down what the healthcare system looks like in Caldas da Rainha, from local clinics to hospitals, and how it works whether you're a resident, retiree, or just visiting. Portugal has a universal public healthcare system called the SNS, and you have both public and private options. In Caldas da Rainha, there's a public hospital right in town, plus access to other hospitals in the region if needed.
Overall, public health care here is known for being solid, especially for basic care, but it's not perfect. Some people do mention long wait times or language barriers at public hospitals. That's why some locals and expats choose to mix in private care for faster services or personalized attention.
We definitely want to highlight the language barrier aspect, since Caldas da Rainha has a smaller population of English speakers compared to bigger cities like Lisbon, Porto, and Braga. You won't be able to get by just using English here. So it's definitely important to know a decent amount of Portuguese if you plan on living here.
So yeah, learning some Portuguese can really open doors, not just for practical things like doctor visits or grocery stores, but for making real connections in the community. And once you start to feel a bit more at home with the language, you'll really start to see what Caldas da Rainha has to offer.
There's a lot that makes this place stand out. A lower cost of living compared to Lisbon and Porto, a fascinating royal history, a growing expat scene, and a reputation for being both safe and welcoming. Whether you're thinking about visiting or thinking about long-term, it's the kind of place that quietly checks a lot of boxes.
Lots of pedestrian-only streets, of course this massive, beautiful green space, but would Josh, C, and I move here?
Well, we've been to Caldas a couple times, and I think that it's a place that has interested us and our community for quite some time, so this video has been long in the making.
Yeah.
I find it to be a very comfortable place, whether you're arriving as a tourist or also to live.
Yeah, I think it's good to call it a medium-sized city for Portugal. I think that's quite accurate. It's not as big like, Lisbon, Porto, Braga, like we mentioned, but it's also not super tiny. So I do think that it strikes a good balance. And I want to say this, we call it Caldas. I don't know if Portuguese call it Caldas.
It's
but
just a shorten it.
Yeah, so if you ever hear us talking about Caldas, this is the city we're talking about.
I think a lot of English-speaking foreigners have shortened it.
Yeah,
right.
Just easier.
Caldas.
I also think too, because saying the word Queen Rainha is kind of hard. So Caldas is easy.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong there. So one of the things that I noticed pretty quickly on our visits there is how you might run into the same people.
Yes.
Kind of let's say often. If you like that, great. If you're going to a place where you're kind of trying to, I don't want to say hide, but become invisible a bit.
Or just not see the same people over and over on a daily basis. Because because of the size of it, especially if you're living in the more downtown area, you'll definitely run into the same people. And actually what was funny is even us just walking around the last visit, we heard that happening actually in English as well, people bumping into each other, walking their dogs and, oh, hey, how are you kind of things. That's okay, so it seems like you do bump into people. Now you can move a little further out, but at that point too, you might want a car because of connectivity.
Yeah.
So keeping that in mind.
Yeah, there's kind of rings of the town, right, or city. There's rings to it. So in the core of the downtown, very walkable. You have a lot of ground floor buildings where you've got a shop or a cafe or restaurant, and then you've got people that live above there. But then as you spread out, then it becomes a little more of a traditional suburban feel. And in those areas, you'll bump into your neighbors maybe, but
not other people all the time.
Yeah, not other maybe foreigners that or other Portuguese people even that like you would if you were living in a downtown area.
Okay, so some notable things is there are hills. So keeping that in mind, it's not the flattest city in Portugal. There are obviously flatter parts, but there are some hills. So keeping that in mind. Safety, like we said, it feels very safe there. I think just because the nature of it being a smaller city, also not as many tourists coming through, and it's a lot more local Portuguese. So it does feel very safe. The thermal spa thing is really cool that has the history that it does and that it's still there. I love that they've preserved it and that's still there. We've never been in. I don't know. So we can't vouch for the healing properties, but I guess it's a thing. Yeah,
I would say, one of the places that we would stay at a lot if we lived in Caldas da Rainha would be in the Central Park, right? Dom Carlos Park.
It's so nice.
It's big, it's nice. There are plenty of spots for kids to play, for you to sit on a park bench and watch the world go by. You can get food there, or you can bring food in and kind of picnic. It's cool. Yeah, it's a nice big green space in the city. And there are a few other green spaces as well around the city, but that is something nice that I think they do well, is having a mix of it being city, but then also keeping the green. It doesn't feel overpopulated either. The one thing I will say is that the 2 times that we've been have been in the summers, and it's been very warm. So I think it's because that interior position, when heat waves do come, they hit hard on the interior of the country. Right, that's true. So, obviously, average-wise, we say it doesn't often go over 90, but when a heat wave comes, it definitely could.
So you might get the hotter
You might want
time.
you might want AC.
Make sure you have that in your apartment. So then we've also not seen it in like the dead of winter and how wet it actually gets. Now us living in Porto, it's probably not as wet there.
Sure.
We get more rain up here. But if you're okay with a little bit of rain, then I think it would be fine.
Yeah. You know, just one important thing to think about is the quality of housing that you have. So like we were saying, if you have AC, fantastic. Make sure that you don't have like serious moisture issues in your apartment. Those are some things to consider for sure. I mean, moisture is like always an issue in Portugal,
Yeah.
it seems. In terms of north to south, you get humidity here. So if the level of construction's right and the build is good, then you should be okay.
Okay, I think we're at that time.
Yeah, so that time is, Kalie, would you expat that? Would you want to live in Caldas da Rainha for a couple years, whatever, not the rest of your life?
Yeah, yes. I would say no, and the reason I'm saying that is because it's too small for me. I think it's really cute, it's charming, it ticks a lot of boxes for someone who wants something a little smaller, a little slower, quieter. Weather-wise as well, it's good, but for me, I think it's just a little too quiet. So I'm gonna say no, it's worth a visit, but not expat that. And you?
I completely agree with you. I think for tourism, for me personally, it's fantastic, but that kind of like lack of like overall diversity in a number of areas has me staying in Porto.
It makes sense.
You know.
Well, we've broken down Caldas da Rainha for you, but there are, of course, other cities around Portugal to consider. So check out this video for that, and don't forget to subscribe. Now let's get moving.
Bye.